Hello, my name is Mru Patel. I'm the chairman and founder of My Tokenized Capital with a very sore voice at the moment. And I'm absolutely honored to have good buddy Tone, I know him for at least 4 or 5 years, I think, and Carl, who I've recently had the acquaintance with, and of course my lovely friend, family friend Jane from Nasdaq. What we'd like to discuss over here is currently what's just happened in the market. We are not used to, we are used to this.
High volatility, yeah.
Yeah, we're used to that. For us, it's normal, and I'm sure you guys as well. I know how you would trade, following you guys. And Tone and me, we talk about this at many, many events, fireside. But it'd be great to have your view. And I'd like Jane to actually...
Yeah. Well, I'm very curious what you're setting up because, I mean,
okay.
are you telling
You can ask the question.
Yeah, well, are you telling people stay in Bitcoin long-term? It's great. I mean, because it's been slightly terrifying.
Yeah, so I've been telling people to stay in Bitcoin for going on 6-7 years now. And this recent volatility is no different than what we had before. This one was mostly generated by a single person and his public statements. But it's not just a regular person. The person is the second most richest person in the world and one of the most, respected people in the world, someone everyone follows. So it's not just an average person, it was someone very, very high on the stature level. And the Bitcoin price did drop about 50%. It dropped 30% over a small period of time. But I remember when it dropped 85% in 10 days. That happened in 2013. And we were back to the all-time highs before the end of the year. And I think this year is no different. I think this drop is, while it may be scary price-wise, it is not scary time-wise. People forget how important time is. People don't realize that there was a point in the stock market where the all-time high was not broken for 20 years. That happened all throughout the 60s and 70s until it finally broke out in the 80s. There was an 87% crash that we still talk about today, and the market was at 2 all-time highs by next year. So I don't think this is anywhere near as bad or scary as some of the prior ones, and I'm still expecting the all-time highs by end of year.
Yeah. Well, we were at 17,000 and all the way down to 3, and then back to 63 or 64. So I mean, what do you think?
I think that the Bitcoin price is likely to hit $100,000 before the end of the year. I've been saying that for like, I don't know, a year now. But I've also been saying that before we reach 100,000, I think we're going to see a 50 to 60% correction. And now we saw this big correction. So I think we've seen now a shaking out of the weak hands. We're shaking out the speculation, the hype. Which is needed because nothing can just go up forever. There's always ups and downs, just like we can see in the history of Bitcoin. It crashed 85%, 70%, 60% before, and it's healthy and it's needed. So I'm still bullish. I'm very bullish, in fact. I think Bitcoin's gonna go to $100,000 before the end of the year, very likely. And I think it's going to go to $1 million within the next 5 years. And then I think it's going to go on to go to $5 million within the next 10 to 15 years.
Wow.
Based on technical analysis, but also based on fundamental analysis. The fact that the monetary system is collapsing as we're speaking. It's a broken system that is breaking slowly enough that people don't really notice it, but it is breaking. And at some point, people are just going to naturally choose Bitcoin, which is a better form of money than the fiat we're using today.
That's interesting you say breaking so slowly you don't notice it, because there are things that, a little bounce of inflation and then they kind of calm down and people are okay, that was just a little blip. But over time, it feels like things are eroding, right?
Yeah, because when people go to the grocery store, they don't notice inflation. And most people, they think like this, or they see like this, which is normal because you would only notice it if someone tells you about it, and even then it's hard to notice. So I think it's very hard to see that the system is breaking. You have to kind of look under under the hood.
Yeah.
And not many people are looking there.
No,
but,
not right now.
Bitcoin people are looking there.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
Tony, you have anything?
I'll add to that. So a lot of people focus on the inflation side as to why assets like Bitcoin are going up. Same thing with the stock market. Same thing, it's going up. Gold, however, has not gone up all that much. For me, the government printing of money is only one part of the equation. Because while the government did print $20 trillion, I think they destroyed more than that by shutting down the economy for a year, and that was very bad. So if you destroy 20 trillion, you print 20 trillion, it shouldn't cause that much inflation. But for me, the main driver of the rise in Bitcoin and the rise in the stocks is the loss of faith in the public sector. People no longer trust the government. Why are companies putting their cash into Bitcoin? It's not because they love Bitcoin so much, it's because they don't trust the cash in the bank. They don't trust what the government will do. The government can confiscate the cash. Now they're talking about doubling the capital gains taxes and many other things. And to me, hyperinflation events are not the cause of too much money printing. To me, hyperinflation events are all political events. When the people lose faith in their government's control of the economy, when the people lose faith in the political system, when they start to question the elections, that's when people start to lose faith in the currency of those countries. This is how Venezuela went into hyperinflation, this is how Zimbabwe went into hyperinflation, and this is how Germany went into hyperinflation in the 20s when there was complete political change that led into World War II.
Right.
And I think we're witnessing that in the US as well. No one, if you asked me a year ago, what would be, or a year and a half ago now, what do you think is the future of the US dollar? I was laughing at the hyperinflationists saying, the US dollar is not going anywhere. The world trusts the US dollar. I don't say that anymore. After what I witnessed in 2020, I think by the end of this decade, the world will no longer respect the US dollar and what the US government has been able to do over the last 100 years. And that will cause a huge shift into Bitcoin.
Very interesting.
So,
well, and I think too, the technology is there for a solution where it really hasn't been in the past. I mean, the global connectedness, the blockchain. I mean, you know, all of that is going to help facilitate this. I think
it did, and it might have been a little going a little too far with the global connectedness because the over fear of COVID basically destroyed the biggest growing sector of the world, which is tourism. There were only two professions did not exist 50 to 70 years ago. Every profession today has existed 100 years ago except for two: tourism and the computer programmer. They're the only two professions that did not exist 100 years ago, and they were going to be the only two professions left because computer programming and automation was going to destroy pretty much everything. And now it's going to be hard to travel. COVID, Australia may never open up for the next decade, and a lot of people are not going to go for the COVID passports, and I think that is a huge travesty as to what happened with this global connectedness, but Bitcoin can maybe help solve that because the government will not have control of the money.
So, just to add a little bit to that, what Tone mentioned about Elon having an impact, I think we talked at a couple of my sessions as well. You know, when Warren Buffett says something, no one pays that much attention in this market because he knows about cars and apples and stocks that anyone can open up and read and invest.
that's right.
If anyone...
I think people don't pay attention to him anymore is because they don't feel a connection to him because
Correct.
he's so old.
And
I think it's an age that I think Elon being young
Correct,
or
and that's what I was
perceived as
gonna
young
say.
is what makes the difference.
And Elon is recognized in the tech space.
Yeah.
He's recognized as an
Well, the
innovator
visionary,
and
right.
a visionary. And I was there in Silicon Valley during the .com days, and I know how some of these things happen. And there's a lot of parallels, even what we did in the .com days, which is happening now. You get whoop, and then look what happened. But with this market now, people listen to Elon for that reason. However, in my view now, I know what happened in the .com days when I was in there, how some of these get manipulated. I don't want to call them out, but I know the games that happen behind it. Don knows it when he was in Wall Street. So we know who's doing the buying and selling and all that stuff. It's an inside club. We had it then, we're having it now. And this being less regulated, it happens. Second thing is, I think what is happening in our space now, what Don was also saying, and Carl mentioned it as well, I called out 150,000 for Bitcoin end of the year. And then we had this. I'm still bullish that it will go over 100,000 by the end of the year. Still bullish. I'll tell you why. Governments, politics, people are realizing we have more power than what we give ourselves credit for. Some of the things I'm doing, we're making everyone beat a coin. Because why should social media make money on you? Why should YouTube and all these people make money on you? We know we are now the product.
Yeah.
So we know, like the Doge and Shivas and all these things happening, people are saying, we can make this market. We don't need all these corporate guys to do that.
Right, and everybody.
So it's very bullish.
This decentralization, that's kind of
Absolutely.
where we're headed. So, Carl, any final thoughts?
I think that people always ask me, should you buy Bitcoin now? Should you buy Bitcoin now? I think every single day of the year is a good time to buy Bitcoin. It just always accumulates and dollar cost average. I think that's the strategy that anyone should do. Because if you take any time period in the last 12 years of Bitcoin's existence, if you just took a couple of years of dollar cost average and held for at least 4 years, you're in huge profit.
Yeah.
So whenever you buy, if you wait just 5 years, historically you're always in absolute fantastic profit, and you cannot compare this with anything else because the risk reward in Bitcoin is phenomenal. The risk is limited to what you put in, and the reward could be potentially 50x, 100x your money if Bitcoin goes out there and destroys the fiat system, which I think is possible. So you cannot find this risk reward anywhere else, the ratio, and that's why I'm putting my whole network in crypto, like every single cent or Satoshi, whatever you want to say, is in crypto. And of that, I would say 80-85% is in Bitcoin. I have some Ethereum, a few altcoins, but it makes no sense to hold anything else for me. I think, of course, as an investor, you should always diversify, and I would recommend that. I'm just saying what I'm doing, and I really think that people should dollar cost average in Bitcoin with at least 5-10% of their portfolio. And that goes for retail, institutions, whoever, everyone, because you cannot afford to miss out on Bitcoin. It's literally the biggest opportunity of not only a person's life, but actually in humankind.
Yeah.
You cannot find this.
I mean, we could be witnessing an amazing transformational time in history right now.
So I will agree with everything Carl said. When people ask me, should I buy Bitcoin? I say, no, you should have bought it yesterday. That's generally been my answer for a long time now. But I come from a slightly different view on it. There was a reason why I fell in love with Bitcoin, and that happened to me because I recognized Bitcoin as having two properties, and we discussed one at length with inflation. I didn't like the fact that the government's printing money, and I hate the fact that there are 100 something currencies around the world as someone that's a nomad that travels for a living. And the other part was the unconfiscatability, your ability to be in control of your own money. But I'm not a huge fan of everyone around me or around us in the crypto space just printing their own money and their own tokens. I don't see that as the future. I don't see how that's any different than the world we left. The only difference is instead of 100-something governments printing money, now we have 1 billion people printing their own money. And I just don't see how that world is eventually going to be any better other than you're going to be the money printer.
Right.
So I'm hoping that the world will make sense again in the future and everyone will just use Bitcoin, which no one actually controls. And that would be the one even playing field when it comes to earning that money.
Yeah. The world will make sense again in the future. That's the quote of the day.
And what I would say, so with due respect to the guys, having come from being an investment manager, I've had my own investment funds, always have some form of balanced portfolio based on your risk. Meaning, if you think you can afford to lose X, put it in the lower shitcoins, as we call it. If you think you can't afford to do it, there's only top 2 or 3 like the Ethereum, Bitcoins that people manage. If you think you want to really, my age, sorry, you cannot afford to lose everything, I still risk. But I say, okay, X% will be on stables. I put Bitcoin, Ethereum into something I believe will never lose money, will always increase. It will go like that. Then you go in the middle ground, and then you go into the startups, where you do the 50, 40, 10, 5, 2%, and have a balanced portfolio, because that's sensible management of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I think diversification is good, but I think that that there's so many altcoins.
Balanced portfolio, Carl.
Yeah, that's true. But I also think that many people should know that most of the altcoins that are trading right now, especially like all the new coins coming out, but right now probably like 50 new coins every single day coming out because of the hype. I would say that 99% of them are going to go back to 0.9. Yeah, probably. And it's only short-term speculation. You could make money, but in the long run, altcoins tend to go back to their intrinsic value close to 0.
And that's why I said, so your 1% you can risk in that category, but don't put 40, 30, 20% in that.
And again, I'm of the belief that it'll only be Bitcoin, but I could be wrong. A couple of other altcoins could eventually succeed, but at least I am smart enough to know that I don't know which ones those will be. So I generally stay away from that space. I'd rather put my money in the stock market, in gold as well, because I see it as a bull market. And of course, Bitcoin, I see as the best asset. And to me, it's the safest asset. It's the safest asset out of all of them, because it's the only unconfiscatable asset you have. In order for you to put your money into any other asset, there's always a risk of confiscation.
Why don't you sell all of your stocks and all of your gold and just go all in on Bitcoin?
Maybe I already have.
Yeah, maybe I have. I knew you would say that. That's a Wall Street guy, by the way. And also the balance side, what the guys are saying. So I do have a little bit on gold as well, because that is solid as anything as well. It won't go like this, like what we see in the crypto space, but it is safety. But don't do 50%, 100%.
Right.
Balance is good.
And be careful with leverage.
And
for sure,
especially in this market.
Yeah.
Look what happened last week. A lot of people got wiped out.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people got wiped out.
Well, thank you so much. Very interesting. I feel like we could talk for hours, but I know you guys have to go.
All right.
We'll do a Zoom on with Vinci and all that as well. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Well, I'm Tom Vays. I have a YouTube channel. Carl, the Moon, has a YouTube channel as well. You guys can always find us online.
Subscribe to these guys.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks.